every single thing is a chance to be inspired. For me, it's like almost overwhelming. You're walking through the world and you're just like, where do I stop looking?
Welcome to the Creative Current Podcast, a show where I talk with Grammy-nominated musicians, Michelin-star chefs, and other creatives. Not the five-step playbook to success, but honest, personal conversations about what it actually feels like to live a creative life. I'm David Rust, and creativity has shown up for me in the early days of building Lyft, in playing salsa music in Cuba, and in running a hospitality business on farms. Through all of it, creating has taught me some of the most interesting things about myself. So let's go meet some incredible creators and hear what they've discovered about themselves along the way. Today, I'm talking with Jesse McMillin. He's been behind brands like Virgin America, where he helped establish that company in the famous safety video that you might have watched. He then went on and helped establish Lyft and their entire brand, running all creative direction. That's where I first got to meet him myself. But he also has an amazing creative outlet on a personal level. He's a painter, a sculptor, and as you'll hear in this podcast, he walks through the world looking at all of it as a source of inspiration and a playground. And so it all fills him up creatively, and he turns that into these incredible creations that he puts out in the world. So let's dive in and get to know him. Hey.
Yo.
Good to see you. I'm loving these glasses.
Oh, thanks.
How's life in Sevilla today?
Good here in Sevilla. It's friggin' hot.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I think I told you I studied abroad there, and I remember getting there around this time of year, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's insane. It's like 100 and something, 105, 110, something like that.
I mean, having moved from the U.S. to Sevilla and having been there for a while now, I think you said you've been there 9 years. How have you found... like how that's impacted you creatively? Definitely
being in Spain and in particular in Andalusia, it's like culturally here is like a really interesting, there's a big kind of cultural part of the city of ceramics. I started taking ceramics classes, which that really changed my creative, I always liked sculpture and kind of building and making things, but like doing ceramics has been kind of a fun, interesting, different, like weird segue. Tiles, there's a lot of tile work, a lot of influence from Africa and places like Morocco and Tunisia and stuff here, like an Arabic influence in the architecture and in the tile work and in some of the like just like culture of the city. So like there's a lot of interesting influences I think that have changed creatively for me. And then also just being in Europe, like I can easily get on a couple hour flight and be in Paris or in London or Berlin or whatever. So like that's also cool because you have access to all of those European capitals.
And if I'm right, that behind you is that's some of your art on the wall there, right? I mean, I'm recognizing that because I remember buying a piece from you that looked sort of like some of the star design there behind you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, whether it's painting or sculpture or tile work or ceramics, it seems like there's an element to which you love that hands-on like artistic expression. And then you also have been a part of developing brands, which is a more digital expression of it, at least if I think about like Virgin America and Lyft and otherwise. So how does, I mean, when you think of art for you and art showing up in literal paintings and sculptures that you have, but also in, your day-to-day work of building, and developing brands, how do you think of that as art, or does it feel different to you in some way?
It's funny because it's like, I think I'm an old guy now too. Mm-hmm. So my perspective has changed a lot over time, but I think when I was young, I used to struggle a lot with it. Because I was like, there was the artist side of me. And I think sometimes you feel like your art needs to be pure and you have this passion to pursue your art in a pure way. Right. And so I had this struggle between my artistic side where I was like, I want to paint, I want to draw, I want to put real effort and time into my personal artistic passion. And then I had my like commercial side of design and work and brand building and I kind of would struggle between those two sides, feeling like one was fighting for time and effort from the other, right? And I feel like as I've gotten older and also just more comfortable with myself and my time and what I do and what I choose to spend my time on, I've really started to look at those two as super complementary to each other, right? That they're one and the same. They are my expression in some way, right? And I feed off of for my work, I feed off of my art side, like things that inspire me and the work that I do from as a personal pursuit of my passion for creating feeds my commercial work and vice versa. Sometimes like something that I'm working on for my commercial work is it's inspiring me or as a reference that I'm like, oh, that's cool. I should bring that into my personal stuff, right? So like I think I really feel like if you can find that balance as a creative person, it's fun because then you don't feel like one is like you're losing out one side or the other.
Right. Was there a moment where that shifted for you? Because it sounds like it didn't always feel like they were complementary. So what shifted that allowed that to happen?
I don't know if it was like an event, right? Like I feel like it was just time, like because I think part of it was just like you realize that time is this thing that is finite, like you don't have infinite time, whether it's in your day or like your whole life, right? And so like I think it was just at some point I started to feel like, why am I so concerned with needing one of these things to be dominant over the other?
Yeah.
And I would look at, and it was just observing too, like that they did help each other, right? That like when I had time and when I did things in my personal kind of pursuit of painting or art or ceramics or whatever it was, it helped me unblock maybe frustration or a limit that I was having in my commercial work, right? And so like I was more noticing that the two were connected. They weren't like separate things. They were part of a connective body of work, right? And it's like I think also as a I mean, it doesn't not for creative people. It's for anything, right? You're a lawyer or a doctor or whatever it is. You want to be proud of what you make, right? Like you want to be proud of the things that you do. And so like I just also was looking at both and being like, man, I'm really proud of the work that I do on both sides. So like why shortchange one or the other, right?
Yeah. Well, and a big part of, what I'm talking with people about on this podcast is where they create from. Like to me, there's like an internal voice that I oftentimes tune into that is where I create from. It feels like an act of listening oftentimes and then expressing whatever I hear. And for you, having built and created so many different forms of things, is there any type of internal voice that you're listening to that you're creating from, or where do the creations come from?
Oh man. Oh well, I'll just say that I am like my wife hates this sometimes about me, but like I'm someone who's like I'm lost in my head daydreaming like probably 90% of the day anyway. Like
Yeah.
literally all the time. Even when I'm working, I'm like daydreaming about this, that, and the other thing. So like for me, I almost feel like it's just like I'm constantly in that internal voice all the time. Like literally thinking about stuff and whether it's a project or a thing or whatever, it's almost like one part of my brain, even when I'm doing something else, talking to you right now, one part of my brain is still going, what is that? What were you working on? And what color was that thing? And do you want to shift that typeface over here? Or like, hey, what brushes do you need to buy tomorrow or whatever, right? So it's like I think I kind of have that constant dialogue happening. It's almost like I got to shut it off sometimes because like then it gets me in trouble. Like I was saying, my wife, she'll be talking to me about something. She's like, "Are you listening to me?" I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "You are not. What did it say?" I'm like,
That happened to me yesterday. Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing is, there's a version because there's so many internal voices that any of us have, right? And
Yeah.
in one way you can describe that as like that nonstop thinking that happens. Mm-hmm. But in another way you can describe it as like this creative voice that's constantly speaking.
Yeah.
And so for you, do they feel different? Do they feel the same?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I can only speak for myself, right? Like I'm someone who is like, well, I'm a really visual person. Maybe that's why I've gotten so much into like visual art, whether it's painting or graphic design or art direction, that kind of stuff. Like I'm very much about like the visual world in front of me and like colors and the things, objects, all that kind of stuff. I'm just like in love with everything, right? Like so like the world is like this constant playground and I feel like I'm just like absorbing it all. And like that is constantly feeding that voice. It's like there's so many things to take in all the time, so many choices, so many possibilities, so many things that inform your creative inspiration. Like, what do you want to do? And so, like for me, I feel like that voice is that it's like the pursuit, this constant pursuit of like what next? What do I want to work on? What do I want to do? What do I want to create? How am I going to change this thing? Um, so
And I'm
yeah,
hearing that
it's
that
like
you fuel that like going out, doing these different, artistic expressions, living in different places, traveling seems like it gives inspiration
yeah.
to that voice.
Everything to me is like a chance for there to be an artistic moment. Like I love cooking. I'm a big cook. And like cooking for me is an artistic expression. It's like how you cut the thing, the colors of all the food that you have. Following the recipe is like science and it's like fun magic. So it's like whatever it is that I do, I kind of approach it in that way of like it's an artistic kind of pursuit to some degree, and it all feeds back into the bigger sense of like, whoa, what like I was saying, sometimes the way I make a salad makes me think about the way I'm going to lay out a page of design, right? Because it's like these elements and the way you compose things, these colors together, a big thing with lots of little sprinkles on it, right? Like that might be the way you like make your avocado toast or something, right? Like, and so it's like it's all connected. I think if you want it to be, at least for me anyway.
Yeah.
And the more you fuel that machine, the better the outcomes are, right? Because you're
Right.
constantly feeding that inspired person inside or whatever.
And so when do things feel not that way to you? Like the opposite of that feeling?
Yeah. I mean, not for me probably, which is lucky, not that much, I would say. I think there's probably in the work side. So I'll maybe try to talk about the two sides. On the personal side, I think sometimes you feel not that way when I think there can be like, or at least I have sometimes, there's a fear of the first mark, right? It's like, because it's for you only. There's not a deadline. There's not a client that's asking for something. It's literally it's only about you and what you want to do, right? And so I think sometimes that blank page can be really daunting. It's like, what am I going to make, right? And so that first mark can be really hard to overcome, right? Because you're like, I don't know, I can do so many different things. What should I do? And like that can put you in a mode sometimes where I think you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to make a choice. I'll move this off till tomorrow or something. Right. And you kind of like, if you're not careful, that can turn into like this giant, it gets bigger and bigger each time you let that happen. And at some point you're like, then you start questioning yourself. Like, do I really know? Am I good at all? Like, is this worth my time? Like you can let that self-doubt kind of creep in. Again, like I said, I don't usually, that doesn't happen to me very often, but I think it's like that first moment of like deciding what to do can be a little daunting. Um, and like I was saying before, I think sometimes if you're feeding yourself with constant inspiration, it's easier because then you're like, oh, that thing inspired me. I'll try that or whatever, right? It's like if you always have ideas to pull off of, if you're not at lack of like something to do, then it can be easier. On the work side, um, the thing that probably is most frustrating for me is like a lack of clarity from people that you're working with can be really hard because so much of creativity is really subjective. It's not like math or something like that where if 1 plus 1 has to equal 2, right? Like with creativity, there's not really a right answer. There's like good taste, and there's like, I think objectively people can look at something that is not good and good, and the majority of people can probably see the difference between those two things, but it's not scientific. And like the more and so when you're the person on the side that needs to make come up with the answer, you're the creative person that has to like provide the solution. When it's this unclarity and it's all about like you don't know what success looks like. You don't know what the brief really is about. Like you don't know what the person on the other side of the table really wants. And you keep presenting things and that person is just saying, I don't know, it's not what I want yet. And you're like, well, I'm not a mind reader, and so I don't know what's in your head. I can tell you what I think, but if we are not grounded in a shared sense of like what we're trying to do, then we just get into this tug of war about whose opinion is the right one, right? And I think a lot of creative people, especially I think a lot of times younger in their career, can take that really personally. Like it's like I'm right, and you're like, yes, you probably are. That doesn't change the fact that you're gonna do that. You're not gonna change the person's mind because there's not a formula that says you're right or whatever. In fact, they might come up with a formula that says you're wrong, and then you feel really bad about yourself or whatever, right? So I think that like lack of clarity and shared understanding with people that you're working with can be really frustrating. And I hate wasting my time. Again, to me, time is so precious, and it's like to put a bunch of effort into something that just gets thrown away because you weren't clear about what the ask was in the beginning. That drives me crazy. I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't take it, because I just feel like, why did we waste all this time?
Right. Right. And I imagine that part, I mean, does that part also come up for your personal projects, or not so much because there's not that sense of like, I mean, you can decide to throw something away if you don't like it, but that would just be a personal preference.
Yeah, I don't think you feel that as much on your personal work, because I think it's easier to look at all of that stuff as learning, right? That like,
Right.
oh, I learned something from this because I put myself in this position, right? Like I was in control of like these choices. And so if I wasn't clear, it was my own fault, right? And so then you can look at that and be like, oh, I really learned something from that, and maybe I improved the next time. You can also learn from those frustrations in your commercial work too, right? Like so it's not like it's all bad, those moments when it goes bad. I think sometimes it's like, or maybe it's easier to blame somebody else because you're like, I didn't want to do this and this other person was the reason for that. And so I think you can get yourself into a place where you feel a little bit more frustrated or like jaded because you're like, it
Yeah.
wasn't my fault that we're here or whatever, right?
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think too. I mean, when I think about the business that you run now, I mean, even the name of it, Yes and, right? I'm imagining it's a whole play on like improv, right? And like everything is a
yeah,
yes and.
it's a
Um,
plus, yeah, plussing up, receiving an idea and adding to it, being
right.
additive like to the process or whatever.
Right. And so, given what you're naming now about how you really like to have clarity from a client and how important that is, but also it seems like with the business that you're running, like improv and plussing up an idea is a big part of that. How do you approach those two together to both get clarity from a client, but then also allow the improvisation of it to sort of unfold?
Um, I mean, I think at least for literally right now, the it's not so much, I guess, clients that we have as partners, right? Where so it's a little bit less of like a service organization, right? Like I think when you're working at like a traditional agency or a studio or whatever, you're like you are the expert and you have like a a client who needs something, and so that relationship has a certain kind of flow to it. And right now the thing that we're building, it's a lot more kind of everyone starting from scratch at the same place, and we're all partners in building something together. And so it's probably a little bit closer to what I was talking about with the artistic side, where it's like, because you're all a part of making all these early decisions together, when there isn't clarity, you're looking at it more from this perspective of like, oh, okay, well, we're all trying to work this out. Less like, you came to me with the problem and it wasn't clear, and so you're the one who has an issue or whatever. We'll see how that changes as we continue to grow, and as the projects that we're working on are, have a lot of variety to them. Um, but I think also just like, for me also, again, like, I feel like I'm at the point in my career when I've had so many really wonderful experiences and the luck and opportunity to work on so much stuff that I think I've got a pretty good level of patience at this point, where the frustrations don't bug me quite as much, because I kind of can see them going in, right? Like, I know when something is like, hey, I know we're going to hit these problems. And so when they come up, I'm not as worried about them, because I'm like, I knew this was going to happen. It's fine. I'm ready for it. Like, it's not a big frustration, because I'm like, I saw this coming. So I think that can be really helpful, is when with experience, and just working on a lot of different stuff, right? With a lot of different types of people, you start to see those patterns. And so then you're able to deal with them a little bit better when they do come up. But
yeah. Well, and I know you've also led, quite large teams of creatives. And so, given that it sounds like you actually have a lot of sort of design philosophy that you apply in your own life, how do you share that with others when you've either led teams or collaborated in a way to sort of foster that type of creativity in the people you work with?
yeah, I mean, it's funny. That's one part about both being a freelancer and this new venture that I'm working on, which is, we're just really small right now. We're a pretty small group of people, so there's not a lot of room for like, tons of mentoring and stuff like that. And it's one thing that I miss, because I love that. I love working with teams of creative people, and I love when I can be of help in that way. But I think for me, like, one of the ways I've always approached both leading and mentoring other creative people is I'm kind of an energizer. Like, I like to try to understand that person and who they are and what gets them excited, what makes them tick, and then try to be an energizer, try to unlock like that energy, so that they tap into that sense of excitement about their work and what they're doing. And sometimes that's through like the little comment about like, hey, maybe try this or maybe try that. Sometimes that's about recognizing when they did something that is really cool and being able to reward it, being like, wow, that was so awesome what you did, it inspired me or whatever, right? So I'd like being in tune with the people that you work with. I'm not a big hard ass kind of guy. I just never, maybe because I never really liked that. And I feel like that is as a leader, to lead through tough kind of direction, I think is much harder. And maybe I should try it, because there's some real power in there, I'm sure. But I think it's a lot harder, because I feel like leaders like that have to be so good at what they do. Otherwise, if they're not, they're just jerks. And so it's difficult, because if you're just a jerk and you're not really good at what you do, people quickly sniff that out, and they're like, why would I listen to you? You suck at what you do, and you're a jerk, so I don't even want to be around you. So yeah, I've always been kind of like an energizer. I like to find what people get excited about and help them unlock more of that. And a lot of times it's just through like showing them what you're into, like, being an avid student of all the cool stuff out there and being like, oh, you would love this, check this out, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, so much of what you're saying is getting me creatively inspired. To think about just going out in the world and viewing it all as a playground, right? And all as a source of inspiration. And, right now my wife and I are traveling for a few months because she has a sabbatical. And so we're in all these new environments. And I've noticed already how much that alone energizes me because it's just
Totally.
new. And sometimes I'm like, the inspiration tank is on empty because I just haven't gotten much new information
Yeah,
in.
totally, totally. It's funny because again, I'm an artist and a painter and sculptor, whatever, on my personal side. But my professional side, I'm really a designer. That's like my background is like in design, specifically graphic design was kind of what I started. But like as you continue to grow in your career, you touch a lot of different things. When what I've always loved is like literally every single thing in this world is designed when you think about it, right? Everything. The sign that tells you where to go on the street, the number on the house, the plate that you eat off of, the car that you drive in, the door knob handle that you some of it's really horrible design, right? Or a lot of it is. But literally every single thing you touch in the world, from the food that you eat to like any mode of transportation that you take, someone thought about it and designed it to some degree. And so like from as a creative inspiration, that's humongous, right? It's like it touches everything, materials, colors, shapes, communication, the way things are communicated. How big is this word versus this word, right? Like I put this one this big and I make this one this little big. That can communicate emotion, right? So like every single thing is a chance to be inspired. Like that's for me, it's like almost overwhelming. You're walking through the world and you're just like, where do I stop looking? Right? It's like
Well,
everything.
I think back even to, your work, at Virgin America, because I had never once been inspired by anything around airlines until I got on my first Virgin America flight and listened to the safety video and the music behind it.
Yeah,
and I remember like I would listen to that song not on the airplane.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was so neat to be like, oh my God, here's a great example of re-envisioning something that had just like not been designed well, and the power of that.
Totally. So that was such a fun project. I mean, so many talented and amazing people contributed to it. That's another fun thing about like the world of creativity is like a lot of times, especially depending on the size and scale of a project, you might be working with tons of different creative people, right? Like on that safety video, the director is an amazing director. I mean, now too, at the time he wasn't as well known, but now he's like John Chu. I mean, he did Crazy Rich Asians, he did Wicked. Like he's this friggin' legendary director. So I look back and I'm like, I worked with that guy on this crazy project. That was so fun, right? And seeing how he worked and what his process was so inspiring. He had done a lot of work early in his career with in the like world of dance and music. That's why it's been a theme in a lot of his movies and stuff too. So all the choreographers, all the dancers, tons of people in that project had been on like every major musical artist, just name someone, Britney Spears or Michael Jackson or whoever, right? Like all these famous people, like people that worked on that safety video with us were like backup dancers or had been in these productions, Dancing with the Stars, or a bunch of people that were like on Dancing with the Stars. So like you're just looking at this whole crew of people that came together, all with their own different, interesting, unique backgrounds and experiences. Such a fun project. And to what you were saying, one of the coolest things was that like it was hard too, because it's like the safety video on the airplane is probably one of the most regulated pieces of communication that you can imagine. Literally, it has to go through all of these checks from like a governmental body. The FAA has to approve it, and not just approve, like watch it and approve it. They literally, every single word, every single thing that's in the visual has to be approved because they're like, this is for the safety of people on the plane. And so, and half of the time, especially before the end, they thought we were crazy. Like we had these two FAA instructors on the project the whole entire time, and they were looking at us like, "What are you guys doing? What are you doing? This is insane." But then when we got to the end, and it was funny, maybe we got lucky. One of them was like this huge Dancing with the Stars fan or whatever. And so like when some of the people were from the show, she was like, "Oh my God, like I've seen these people before. This is amazing." But like when we got to the end, the final product, it was so cool because we got this word back from them that like they actually the head of the FAA had kind of got up and said like, this is like now a standard for how these things should be because, hey, look how entertaining it is. And it's like people most of the time would actually just tune this video out. Like it would play and people take their headphones off. They're reading a book. They don't care about it. But because it's engaging and fun, people were actually watching it, posting the video online, dancing along with the people in the plane and stuff. And so they were like, they saw the power of how just changing the way that you do something can actually really improve its effectiveness or whatever, right? And so yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a fun project actually.
And where does the seed for an idea like that come from? Like, where did that all begin?
It's funny. So like a lot of times it's just from some random comment, right? But like what ended up happening was that at the time I was working for Virgin America, the Virgin brand is already starting with a brand that has such a rich history was amazing, right? Like that is a luck in itself, right? But the Virgin brand has a really great background. It's also a network of companies across lots of different industries. So you have like, you have all the different airlines. You also have trains. You have the records and media and stuff like that. One of the Virgin brands in the group was called Virgin Produced. And so they were like a movie, television, commercial production company, right? So they made Hollywood movies. They also did a lot of like commercial work. And one of the things that Richard Branson tried to do with all of those brands is create a lot of connective tissue between them. So he would be like, hey, if you want to work with each other, you should, because it's better, right? You're working with a person who knows your brand. A lot of times we would, get really good deals from these different Virgin companies. And so we were working with the team at Virgin Produced, and it was funny, like, we were talking about what we wanted to do, a lot of brainstorming in the early sessions. And then like a couple of the guys there both were really into like at the time, like the whole dancing thing was having a little moment. Like those shows on TV were pretty popular and like the dancing kind of thing was having a little moment. And I think one of them had worked with the director before, like had a connection with the director. And so we were talking about it and they were like, hey, what about if we took that as like a theme? Because it's kind of interesting when you think about the safety instruction that happens in the plane. It was like a person is in the plane and they're trying to tell you this thing. And it's a lot of like these arm movements. They're like pointing to things. And they're like, that could almost be like the basis for a dance, right? Because they're like, there's a lot of this body movement that's like trying to show you putting something on, body movement, walking around, up and down the aisle, whatever, right? And so like, it was like these early conversations where it was like, hey, this is kind of having a cultural moment, that whole dance thing. Wouldn't that be interesting? It's already like a physical, almost like a dance, what's happening as they're instructing it. What if we use that as the theme? And we just kind of ran from there. And like, it was one of those things that and this has happened to me a couple of times in my career where it's like, when something is gonna really work, it's interesting. You start to feel it pretty early on. Like people get excited. Everyone who sees and hears the idea is getting excited. Everyone that would come on board was getting excited by it. And so it's like you kind of knew you had something special, which was interesting too, because it was one of the hardest projects I've ever worked on because it was complicated. And there were a lot of moments where it felt like the whole thing was just going to fall apart.
Sure.
But in the end, it was so rewarding. And yeah, it's like definitely been something that people remember for sure. So
this stuff for me is, gosh, like I love talking about these ideas because to me, like looking at the world in the way that you're describing it as like a playground and a source of inspiration, like what a better way of looking at the world than so many other ways you can look at it, right? And I'll oscillate. There's times where I'll walk around, I'm like, oh my God, look at all this inspiration and like how much it ignites me creatively. And there's other times where I'll walk around the world and be like, oh God, everything feels hard and difficult and scary. And there's a choice, right? I think you even use
Yeah.
those words at some point. You're like, you can choose
Yeah.
which way you look at it. So how do you, I mean, is that a conscious choice that you're making to look at the world that way?
Not for me, which is like, I feel super blessed. I am just a pretty net. If you talk to many people that know me, a couple of things. I'm a pretty net positive person. Like I'm a much more a glass half full than a glass half empty kind of guy, for sure. I definitely I'm very much in the moment too. Like I find it very hard to project forward or backward in time because what's happening right now is so crazy. There's so much to take in that I find it hard not to just be where I am and be so absorbed in like all the stuff happening at my doorstep or whatever. And yeah, I just like I'm super mellow too. Like I just love. We're all so lucky to just be on this rock, you know. So it's like being grateful for that every second feels hard not to be, right? So I feel like for me, it's never really been a challenge. I'm such a happy little fish or whatever, swimming through the ocean. But yeah, but that's not everyone's. I understand that. Like, it's funny because my wife is like very much the opposite. Which is maybe why we're such a good partnership or whatever, and have been married for over 30 years now or whatever. So, yeah, she's definitely kind of, someone that does struggle with that. And I see that, and I can see that it can be hard. Like the world is a super difficult place, man. Like you look at it right now and sometimes you're just like, what's going on? The world is crazy and super freaky. And like you're bringing a kid into it and you're like, whoa, is this the world that I want this kid to grow up in? I don't know. So I think it can be hard, but I always try to kind of, when I have those little moments of feeling that, most of the time what I do is I just, again, absorb everything that's in front of me. And most of the time it's like a beautiful blue sky or it's something amazing in front of me. Or I try to think, God, 99% of the rest of the world has it a lot harder than me. I should not complain because like I've got it easy. So so between those couple of things, usually I can reset my brain pretty fast.
Yeah. And do you find that also engaging yourself in one of your creative acts like helps pull you out of that too, whether it's, sit down and start making ceramics or engaging in some creative outlet, or does that not take you out of that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I never really thought about it like that, but I am basically doing that with like most of my time, whether that's making something, which is a huge chunk of the time, or being inspired by something, reading a cool graphic novel or going to an art museum or like looking at someone else's cool work or listening to some great music or whatever, right? So it's like between doing and then being inspired there's almost no time in between. And so then it's kind of like, it's easy to kind of just jump from one to the other.
Right. Right. And that's a nice oscillation from inspiration to building and just back and forth.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Oh, well, Jesse, it's always so fun chatting with you. And what's neat is I think a lot of what we talked about today, we didn't really get a chance to talk about a lot when we were working together at Lyft or afterwards.
No, totally.
And so it's totally. Really neat to get a chance to like see the inner workings of your world.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, it's super fun. Grateful to have the chance to talk with you actually. And it's been great. I love it.